So I feel like there's this video that is important for me to make, and there was a subject, and it's kind of come up of jewelry and concerning just the fraud and the crimes that somebody's tried to bring against me so as to attempt to live in what was meant for me, use ideas that I've presented and claim them as their own, and all kinds of other infractions. But it does have to do with a piece of jewelry that I lost at a pretty significant time. It seems that it went missing in the summer of 2021-ish. I do know I was living on Copper and Alabama Street then. And I did have a neighbor that was an old neighbor in the Berg actually be pretty obsessed with this particular piece of jewelry and asked me to give it to her. And I was like, no way. It was my favorite necklace. And I feel like that site might have went down, whatever. I had my Frippery Or page on. But for a while it had a line of, like people classified my jewelry as steampunk, although I didn't necessarily classify it as steampunk when I came out with it on Etsy. But I did use the tag because it was pretty popular at the time. But I didn't use the gears so much. I just pretty much did the hammered copper. Mine was a little more dystopian, like something you would dig up out of the ground, in those days or whatever. But there was one particular artist that came out with some components named Tim Holtz. And he came out with some components, and I did actually use them in some of my jewelry. And since I went estate sale shopping a lot and I got antique jewelry, a lot of it broken, I started putting some of it together and making original pieces with random pieces, components of costume jewelry, some of my gemstone beads. Like if I went through a whole strand of beads and I'd already sold all the sets I could, or I had like sort of mismatched stones that I couldn't turn into a pair of earrings, I would use these components, put them together to make a particular look. And so what it would be different sort of lengths of chains of, say, old vintage antique costume jewelry. And so it was kind of like very sectioned stuff, but the one thing it had was it would have one of those Tim Holtz gears, and it would have one of his clasps that would clasp inside the gear with stuff usually hanging off the gear. And so I kept one for myself because it had a silver shell, and it was an antique or vintage, probably antique, because quite a bit older than 20 years, silver shell. So for myself, I made one, and it had a lot of it was oceanic sort of colors. It had, I remember, a piece of fluorite on there, and it had a little aquamarine briolite hanging. It had some patinaed coppered chunks with silver. But what was hanging from the gear, it had two sides, and one side I remember said Journey. And then when you'd flip it over, and that one had like the cut J. And then on the other side, it had like, I feel like it was like Imagine or Inspire. I'd have to look through them to remember for sure. But I feel like it was either Imagine or Inspire on the other side of Journey. And so even though that neighbor had asked me to give it to her, I said no, and I kept wearing it. And there would be old pictures and, say, old Instagrams of me wearing this particular necklace. But I remember in half of these angel messages, I feel like a lot of them are like misinformation and skewed information and information to try to support somebody that's trying to live in my destiny. But there's one talking about how somebody picked somebody out, and I didn't know how this whole like swapping thing worked. I do remember I had a girl that was my daughter's friend with initials SM staying with me for a little bit, and I remember her giving me like a duck-like figurine and then trying to take some of mine, and I didn't know what all of that was about. I don't even want to know what any of this weird stuff is about. But anyway, she did that. I ended up throwing that like duck or chicken figurine or whatever it was. So it could be, possible that she ended up with it, as, I tried to help her and her boyfriend out, but they were just too much for me. So that only lasted a few days. But I do remember that, old neighbor from the Berg was there in this point in time. And it could be something where somebody either that has been kind of like working against me ended up with, somebody that tried to swap some energy with me ended up with, or it could be something that that person was trying to obtain for this person that, you know, basically imitated me and stole my, you know, stuff I was putting up online, posting online, and trying to make it their own, and basically trying to complete this destiny swap thing, even with a partner. And so anyways, I don't know if that would provide proof of either this whole connection of either like a cult/coven or this individual, because I don't even know where I would look up this individual's page or social media or anything else, and I don't care to. But I don't know, like there was one message that talked about how somebody saw somebody wearing a particular message and picked them out of the crowd, you know, based on that piece of jewelry. I was trying to think of jewelry I wore to a certain Big Sky show, but I can't think of it. And then all of my stuff, when I had to basically flee the WC with my life, all my stuff went through. You know, I think there was a lot of a nefarious intent, and all my stuff ended up being vandalized. And I mean, I don't know what I ended up with and what I didn't end up with from WC, you know, or, you know, at both of those jobs, since that person had worked, or nefarious parties had worked with those people to get rid of me. You know, I don't, like, they all had access to my rooms. And so, I mean, I don't know what all was taken. And I didn't know at the time that's how that works, is where they take something with your energy and your DNA on it, and then do like dark spiritual work with it to come against you or to try to take your essence or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know if that would provide any sort of proof at all to, you know, I'll be glad when this whole investigation's done and when this is done and when I can be returned back into a proper lifestyle where I'm actually using my ideas and somebody isn't getting away with trying to take them and claim them as their own. So anyways, there's just something really significant about the jewelry thing. And so I thought I would mention the fact that I had wore that piece quite a lot, and it was something that really was important to me, as I love the ocean. Not only that, but it had a seashell on it, which I feel like is very fitting for the Ariel Ursula thing that I'm actually going through. You know, so anyways, I just thought I would like point that out and try to describe that necklace that I ended up losing at a very significant time. And it's funny that somebody wants to try to go on my page and boss me around and tell me to not wear makeup. I can wear makeup if I feel like it. There's not a single person supporting my life in any way that has any right to tell me whether or not to wear makeup. Like, I don't wear makeup 80% of the time, but I think somebody has a real big problem with actually me being seen how pretty I look, you know, and that's, you know, abusing the eye of the beholder, right? How pretty I look to other people when I am made up. And like for me, I like to get made up to go to a nice event, which I haven't been to in quite some time. Or say if I was to be on the news, you know, I'd probably wear makeup for that. But I already know what my future husband and the one that I'm supposed to be with, what his view is on that. Like, you know, he wants a girl that he can look at without makeup and looks attractive without makeup and doesn't have to be scared in the morning when he wakes up and looks, you know, on the other side of the bed and is like, who is that? You know, sort of a thing. But also supports my decision to want to put makeup on here or there if that's what I choose to do. So anyways, this whole thing is so ridiculous. I will be so glad when it's all over with and fully exposed, and I get to get credit for my original work, and I get to be using my gifts, skills, and talents as I should be, because it's heartbreaking every single day that, you know, I'm not using them and somebody else has been. And even when I went on somebody's post and somebody put on there, I posted a video, but there's only one view because the person cloning my device is controlling it from the other end. So, you know, this what I'm going through is serving a purpose right now. To wrap it up, if I just move on and let them get away with what they've been getting away with, it doesn't actually solve anything. So there's definitely, you know, they've been doing this for too long, and it needs to be dealt with for it to stop and for anything to actually change. But yeah, it was a little annoying to see somebody with a fake profile talking about something that I'd presented actually through a video, whether or not he saw it or not, or was able to. That was on, like, I feel like the page that is Sass Soldier, would still be Sass Soldier, where I talk about, how that's what I'd really like to do with my life and how I would like to support the future generations, is by allowing people that have had everything stripped from them being in a place where they can work to pay for that, but then also they can be supported in bringing forth a business plan and, like putting half of their week's time into developing their own businesses, so doing both. And I don't like to call it like a commune because that's really cultish, and but more like a community. So yeah, it was really disappointing to see somebody actually with a fake profile, mind you. That's the big important part to note here. Putting my same exact idea, as they're trying to take that and fill those shoes that were meant for me. So anyways, whatever, I have stuff to do, but I just thought it was really important to address this jewelry issue. And as it relates to this stuff, ridiculous stuff, which, by the way, when I did go to therapy, I had it confirmed that I needed a tort case attorney. And I had it confirmed that I have been a victim of BMW since I was born. So any nefarious weirdo that wants to try to play that the other way, no, knowing what I know now, it would be unwise. But when I was oblivious and naive to all of this going on, and I presented the straight facts, not knowing what was behind it, it was actually worked for me, and it was properly documented that I was a victim of all this stuff. For me to come with the information now, it would sound nuts to somebody that doesn't really know about it. But to somebody that knew about it when I didn't, it actually was able to be documented and verified in my favor. And that information was presented to the government before my documents were stolen and scrubbed and changed and plagiarized, or whatever the term would be, by other parties so that they could commit their fraud and get away with it, sort of a thing. So anyways, yeah, nobody has any right to go on someone's page and tell them what to do. But I know who it was, and so it really makes me feel sorry for the person that got forced into that and tricked with my energy into having to endure that, sort of abuse. It's a spiritual thing behind it, so I was able to confront it and conquer it in the spirit right after that anyway. So it works for them to put their gross, nasty, stinky energy on there so that I can actually deal with it in the spiritual realm, because that's where a lot of this battle is. And it was chained and locked up. And yeah, as far as like the authorities go, I can't get any further into that. But they're involved, believe you me. They're involved. And I can't wait for the person to be finally convicted so I actually can move on and use other electronics. But for now, what's going on has to serve its purpose and be wrapped up, and all of their crimes need to be tallied and committed against them, because it's not helping our future and it's not helping the growth of America, which, by the way, a lot of people that want to run these organizations that they claim to be helping and protecting people, they are involved with the worst crimes in the world. And that's why it's really important that they're not able to take somebody's idea and run with it, because, it's real convenient to say you're protecting a certain type of people, but they go missing, and then you're able to say, oh, well, they were already targeted and a victim and afraid of that anyway, so we don't know what happened to them, but we're over here protecting their lives. Yeah, right. That's why it's really important that the right person gets put in that spot and that this whole thing gets exposed.